Well, there were big talks yesterday between the United States and Iran, taking place in Oman, about Iran's nuclear program. The Iranian foreign minister described the meeting as calm and respectful. But where are they heading? Let's speak now to Dr. Burcu Ozcelik, who joins us. Hello to you.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Well, what do you think? Do you think progress is being made towards, the ultimate goal of Donald Trump to stop Iran getting a nuclear weapon?
Well, the stakes are very high. That hasn't changed. Yesterday's meetings were described as positive, constructive. The wording coming out in following the meeting were very optimistic. The situation, of course, the risk of escalation has been very high across the region, and the standoff between Iran and Israel, the potential for strikes against Iran's nuclear military facilities have been incredibly worrying. And it seems as though yesterday was sort of baby steps. It appears that a sufficient level of trust was obtained to be able to continue talks. And potentially the most important outcome of yesterday's dialogue was that there will be a follow-up as early as next Saturday.
Do you think it's remotely possible that the Iranian regime would agree to halt its nuclear program? Suggestions that it's only weeks away, really, from having a nuclear weapon.
Well, exactly, and that's why the stakes are very high. And it appears that both sides, the U.S. and Iran officials, have a sufficient level of incentive. They're motivated to reach a deal. Different factors on both sides. The Iranian regime, of course, has been crippled by the impact of economic sanctions. They have found ways to get around this, of course, and maintain the trade in their oil supply, primarily with the Chinese market. But nonetheless, ordinary Iranians have been suffering the consequences of both primary and secondary U.S. Sanctions. And so there is motivation on the Iranian side from a domestic perspective, as well as the fact that its regional proxy network has been severely degraded after 18 months of war by Israel, aiming to dismantle Hamas and Hezbollah. The regime in Syria, of course, has fallen. So the question is whether there's enough pressure on the Iranian regime to agree to certain concessions on its nuclear program.
What could they concede?
They could concede to more rigid international monitoring, verification, a checks system could be agreed. Iranian officials over the past few weeks have been signaling that this is certainly possible. What they are not in favor of, and is sort of a non-starter, is the full dismantlement of the nuclear program, which is something that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, of course, described earlier last week as being the objective, the full and complete dismantlement of the Iranian nuclear program. But that's very unlikely. The Iranians have already said that they will not go that far, and that would be sort of a blow to their national sovereignty and their ability to pursue a civilian nuclear program. But the main concession, I think, would be a verification process that would enable international observers to be able to monitor the enriched uranium stockpiles. But again, very, very early days at this stage. And the risk of derailed dialogue, of sabotage, potentially, or spoilers on either side remains very high, I would say.
Donald Trump, as you know, has said that if there aren't concessions from Iran, it'll be a very bad day for Iran. What is the likelihood of military action by Israel, or more likely Israel supported by the United States, to destroy facilities?
I think all options remain on the table. This is something that President Trump and his team have been declaring throughout the lead up to these talks. So the military strike option is certainly there. And we know that, of course, Israeli officials believe that to be that the opportunity now is ripe for this to happen, with Iran at its potentially weakest point since the revolution of 1979. So that option remains. I think President Trump earlier last week set out what his objectives are quite clearly. And he said they just can't, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and that's it. He even said, I'm not asking for much. So there he's kind of set the parameters for what these talks might look like. The question is, will this be an arms control treaty, a dismantlement, which again seems to be unlikely, or will this be a more comprehensive deal that also considers Iran's ballistic missiles, its regional role, its support for various proxy organizations or terrorist groups? But it seems increasingly that the parameters are going to be more narrow than was initially anticipated. So focusing on Iran agreeing not to pursue the objective of possessing a nuclear weapon.
Dr. Burcu Ozcelik, Senior Research Fellow for Middle East Security at RUSI. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Christopher, what do you make of what you've been hearing coming out of Oman? Is this progress?
It's certainly progress that they're talking. They're talking through the Omanis, as you mentioned. You have two delegations sitting in separate rooms, but the door between the room may be open. When they came out last night, having had the sort of stuff and the pith of the negotiations, Araghchi said himself, the Iranian foreign minister, had a few minutes of direct consultations, of direct exchange of amenities, as he would put it. But in fact, it was probably much more substantial than that. And so this allows Trump to say that the negotiations were indeed direct, and it allows the Iranians to say they were indirect. At the moment, I would say that the first day's negotiations tell us very little about what the positions will be with respect to the demands that Trump is going to make of Iran. And these demands are a matter of fevered speculation at the moment. Nothing is being leaked. And at the moment, we can only speculate that Trump is either saying, we're going to bring you to your knees, and if you don't, we're going to bomb the hell out of you, or he's saying something a bit more emollient in order to show his own electorate back home that he is not all talk and no trousers, and that he can actually do some of the things that he was elected in order to do. So that's the position we are at now.
Well, as you've described it there, we don't know whether the stick or the carrot is being used to understand what's brought the Iranian delegation to the table. But what do you think Iran is hoping to walk away with in these negotiations?
Well, the first thing that Iran is hoping to walk away with is survival.
Right.
Iran has been battered diplomatically, militarily over the past year and a half. Its handling of the Hamas crisis, the Gaza crisis, has been inept. It was shown to be horribly infiltrated by Israeli intelligence when a visiting dignitary of Hamas was blown up in Tehran. Its proxies, Hezbollah, have been battered. They've also been horribly infiltrated. It has lost its major Middle Eastern ally in the form of Assad, this dictator strongman of Syria. So it's lost Syria in inverted commas. The situation at home in Iran is deeply troubling. Economically, it's in a very bad position. People are deeply, deeply disgruntled. They are also highly cynical, and that cynicism extends to these talks. And so what Iranians are saying now is, we've seen talks before. We've had 20 years of on-off talks. They haven't led anywhere. Why should we think that these are going to lead somewhere? But at the same time, I think from the sort of external observer's perspective, there is a crunch point approaching, because Iran is within a few weeks of being able to build a bomb, a few months of being able to build a bomb that is deliverable and can actually cause damage, a nuclear bomb, that is. And Trump has been extremely threatening and has sent threatening letters, and also threatened to extremely dire military response should Iran not toe the line. So it's a very, very fraught, extremely tense position that Iranians now find themselves, and the Iranian regime, and they're not they're not precisely the same thing.
But in your view, Christopher, the fact that they're not that far away from their goal of building a nuclear bomb, you don't think that that's a strong enough hand for Iran to sit at the table in these negotiations? You feel that Donald Trump has enough power to actually get them to agree to perhaps abandon their nuclear design? Do you think he has enough clout over them for this?
Well, that's a very interesting question because it comes down to the psychology of both sides.
Yeah.
Trump administration one showed that it was it played by different rules. It ratcheted up sanctions. It came out of the existing nuclear deal, which was had been sort of trundling quietly along the tracks. No one was particularly happy with it, but it was at least preventing the Iranians from getting that much closer to having enormous stockpiles of fissile material. And also the other thing he did was he ordered the execution, the assassination of Iran's most revered and most inspirational military leader, Qasem Soleimani. So what Trump did in his first administration was to indicate a willingness and an ability to think outside the box that the Iranians had got used to when dealing with the US. So this is definitely an advantage because they don't exactly know how to play him, and they don't exactly know what he will do next. It was much easier to play the Biden administration because they played by the rules, as it were. So there are various pressures on Trump. One of them is funnily enough, quite a sort of mundane commercial one, and that is that his commercial mind will also be thinking about the low-hanging fruit that could accrue to America should a deal be possible. And one of these low-hanging fruits is a deal that Boeing penciled in with Iran to sell an enormous number of aircraft to them back in 1996, that then became impossible because of sanctions, and which Boeing, which is in very bad straits, would presumably very much like to revive now. The other thing that I've mentioned is of course, domestic. Trump would like to bring home a laurel of some kind and to say that I've tamed Iran, even if the deal that he brings home isn't anything like as stringent and isn't anything like as limiting to Iran's nuclear ambitions than he would like. Even if that deal were not as good as he would like it, he wants to bring something home. So I think the Iranians are playing on both of these desires. They're taking the measure of Trump and they're taking the measure of Witkoff because they don't know these guys. And so those 2.5 hours yesterday will have been extremely important formatively.
Christopher, thank you for your time and your expertise. Really good to speak to you. Christopher de Beleg there, former Tehran correspondent for The Economist and author of In the Rose Garden of the Martyrs, a memoir of Iran.